That was an explanation of how to get to this idea of what we call economies and diseconomies of scale. This term can be really confusing, so here's how I keep them clear in my mind. If you have increasing returns to scale, then that is going to cause, but not equal, economies of scale. Increasing returns to scale is about production. Economies of scale is about price or cost. If you have decreasing returns to scale, then that's going to cause what we call diseconomies of scale. When we look at the long-run average cost curve, we see that it has a similar shape to short-run average costs, and that's not an accident. However, it's important to see that with long-run average cost, it's actually made up of lots and lots and lots of tiny little short-run average cost curves inside of it. So really, the long-run average cost curve, each one of those points is some point that's tangent to a short-run average cost curve inside it. You don't need to draw that many though. The analysis that we can do from this is to look at, okay, well, if I'm a firm and I want to produce Q2, well, I can produce Q2 at short-run average cost 1, or on the short-run average cost curve 1. However, by going into the long run, by doing something to change all of my factors of production, by going into the long run and moving to short-run average cost curve 2, by doing that, I can now produce Q2 not at this cost, but at this lower cost here on SRAC 2. Again, this continues to happen all the way down until we get to the bottom point of the long-run average cost curve, at which point we cannot produce more at a lower rate. From that point to the left, we call that range of the long-run average cost curve. We say that it is experiencing economies of scale. After that point, we would say that the firm is experiencing diseconomies of scale. Now you notice the way I said that, I said the word experiencing. And it really is, it's a good word to use there, because what we're saying is that the firm is being affected by these two things, which we call economies of scale, or later on, diseconomies of scale. And it's not something that the firm really has a lot of control over. These are just results of making your operation larger and larger and larger. Those results can be good or bad. The good results of making your operation, your firm, bigger and bigger and bigger, or scaling up, those good results we call economies of scale. They include these here. We've talked about specialization of labor a lot, that different people get good or are good at doing different parts of the production process. It's also important to remember that management is the same. Some people, if you have a manager who's managing a bunch of creative people, that manager might not be very good at managing a lot of people who are very detail and task oriented. So, as you get larger and larger, you can have managers who overlook, different parts of the same company that have different skills, but they can be aimed towards accomplishing the same sort of goals together. Other things, especially the fixed costs, remember the more and more and more we produce, the lower and lower and lower those fixed costs get. One of those in particular is the fixed cost of marketing. If I'm going to run a big advertising campaign, a lot of the cost of doing that comes in the producing of the advertisement itself. Hiring the people to make the advertisement, the actors, the design people, all the camera people, all that sort of thing. Well, once I've done that once, I don't need to do it again and again and again every time I show the same advertisement. Third, we see that some types of capital, some types of machinery are only efficient when you produce a bigger and bigger and bigger amount of output. If you can imagine, if you had a big massive tractor, one of the big combines they use on a big farm, that's not a very efficient way to go take care of a small little backyard garden or something like that. It's not going to do you any good. Similar to that is the idea that capital is often indivisible. If I have a lot of output, well, I can hire a big truck to take all the output from my factory to where it needs to go. But if I'm only producing a few, it doesn't make any sense for me to hire a big truck or buy a big truck. Therefore, that capital is not divisible. You can't use it in smaller portions. Another example of that would be like an assembly line or something like that. You can't use a conveyor belt, an assembly line. You can't make it on a small scale, where you're just assembling one or two a day. Similar to that are just processes, things that, ways that companies do things that they only work well as you make output bigger and bigger and bigger. The diseconomies of scale, the things that are worse as you get larger and larger, are things such as coordination, which is making sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing at the moment they're supposed to be doing it, making sure they're doing it right. Oversight is like preventing mistakes. Mistakes cost money. If you can think of examples of recalls where, not too long ago, Toyota had to recall a bunch of vehicles because they were not safe. Those sort of things slip through. The larger your company is, it's easier to make mistakes. Communication isn't dissimilar to that, but it's just kind of like the game of telephone. One person says something to somebody else and on and on and on, and by the time it gets to the end, the message has changed quite significantly. So especially in firms, that can be a big problem, that what the people who are making the decisions up top, what they're thinking may not really turn out to be the exact same thing once it gets down to the production level. Finally, we have a lot of problems with motivation. If, I own a small firm and there's, myself and 2 or 3 employees, they're probably going to be people I have a good relationship with. They're probably motivated to make the company successful. The point is they've bought in, as the saying says. But if I'm just a cog in a wheel, if I'm just one out of thousands of workers and I don't really see my place in the company, maybe I don't really work as hard as I should. Maybe I let mistakes go through because I'm not going to be personally affected by it. Maybe some of these things that we talk about over here that are good, me understanding how to do a process better, maybe that goes away because I know that even if I know how to do it better, that decision isn't going to filter all the way up to the top, and ultimately management's going to tell me, no, you can't do it that way, even if it's better, just because it's too hard to coordinate that sort of change in a large corporate atmosphere. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below.